Good afternoon, everybody. It's 1 o'clock and it's time for us all to learn how to write our procurement plan. If you would, I'd like you to go to the chat feature and double click on the link that I put in the chat. And that will bring up the most recent procurement plan, the sample procurement plan. It's hot off the presses. I just completed it this morning. I even get confused as to which is the latest and greatest, but I use this as a working document so that if I get information that I think would be helpful for the procurement process, something that will help you write a better procurement document, I revise it. I wait till I have a few of them, but you know, as you all learn about procurement, I'm continuing to learn about procurement. So when there's something that comes up, I update the document. You can see the link on the screen shows the update is 4/26/22, which is this morning. So again, it's hot off the presses. So if you have two screens, I would like to see you open up your second screen and open up the sample procurement plan so that you can complete the sample procurement plan while we are discussing it. If you have not been able to open up the procurement plan, please let us know in the chat. Okay, I'm seeing a lot of messages that people are saying they cannot open it through the link. If try doing it this way, try copying the link out of the chat. You cannot copy it from the screen because I'm sharing my screen. So you're not able to copy it from there, but you can copy the link from the chat and put it into your browser and see if you can open it there. And I'm seeing again that the link is not showing up in the chat. Tess, I just sent that to you. Please let me know in the chat whether you got the link. Okay, I'm gonna try putting the link in again into the chat feature because I'm still seeing people that are still unable to download the document. All right, I think everybody's telling me they got it. So if you didn't get the document, then please again put it in the chat so I can tell that I really want you to be able to see the document as we go forward. Okay, so it looks like everybody's got it now. So let's get started. We're basically going to go through the document page by page and just kind of talk a little bit about it. And like I said, I want you to fill it in while we're on this call, and that way you'll have it done. For some reason, my first page is not coming up. Okay, so the first thing for you to note is that you'll see a number of highlights in yellow, and that indicates areas that you need to fill in. So if you just click on the yellow field, and you can delete the information that's in there, which is just supposed to tell you what you're supposed to input, and then and complete it with your information. So on page 1, the first thing you're going to do is complete the name of your program, where it says name of school food authority or sponsor. And then the next section to complete is the number of pages, and you're going to need to change that from page 1 to page 32. So again, just click in the yellow box to change. You can also see that, and y'all tell me in the chat if I'm going too fast. So and you see that there are places for signatures. Once the plan is complete, you'll have it signed by all the appropriate personnel. If you don't have a purchasing agent, you can delete that. This is a Word document, and so it's intended to be tailored to you. So, so you can take out information that is not applicable to you. So go to page 2 of your procurement plan. So remember that you have to have documented procurement procedures for every dollar that you spend in a child nutrition program. If you have to go to Dollar General to purchase 1 loaf of bread, there has to be a written procedure of how that procurement is going to be conducted. Also remember that you must use the formal procurement method if the value of your contract is going to be $30,000 or more. So, for example, if you plan to purchase all of your food and supplies from 1 wholesaler, and you're going to exceed $30,000, you must do a formal procurement. If you do a small purchase procurement instead, and you spend more than $29,999, then you could be in big trouble with USDA, because that is what our formal threshold is. And it is your responsibility to make sure that you keep up with what you're spending to make sure you don't exceed that small purchase threshold. Also important on this page is that all employees that participate in the procurement process have to sign a written code of conduct. So, and we have the USDA code of conduct is posted to our website. On page 3, it talks about state taxes. And it is referring to, this is the revised statute on state taxes for non-public schools only. Private nonprofit programs are not tax exempt, but private schools or participants in the school lunch and school breakfast program are exempt from state taxes. Page 3 also discusses the requirement that the sponsor has to retain all the records pertaining to the program for 3 years after the final claim for reimbursement, unless there's an audit that requires the sponsor to maintain those records for a longer period. You would need to keep invoices, procurement documents, procurement specifications, advertisements, the actual advertisement, the bid or quote analysis, how you selected the vendor, rejection letters, all contracts, including price, and any other documents that would affirm your use of federal funds must be kept. Also on page 3 is the requirement for using the micro purchase method of procurement. Remember that a micro purchase is a one-time purchase that does not exceed $10,000. If you use this method of procurement, you must include how you plan to spread the wealth in the procurement plan, and we'll look at that later. And you also have to remember that you cannot use the micro purchase method to circumvent free and open competition. If you plan to use the micro purchase method for like items, such as food or supplies, but you're going to spend $30,000 or more, you must use the formal procurement process. Page 4 of your procurement plan discusses how the sponsor can use the small procurement method. So again, if it's less than $30,000 for your entire program, you can use the small procurement method. And the small procurement method is often called just getting quotes. And quotes must be obtained from at least 3 qualified sources. I'm getting a comment that says it won't allow me to edit. See if you can go into, here, let me, hang on just a second. You can download the procurement plan from the CMP website under the summer food service program or the school side under the sample procurement plan. I don't know why it's not allowing you to edit it. We'll keep moving on, and if I need to, I can help you later. So with each small procurement that you do, you have to provide each prospective vendor with detailed written specifications for the items that you're wanting to purchase. You must provide clear and accurate descriptions of any technical requirements that must be provided for either the product or the service. Also on page 4, there's some details about the Buy American requirement that's listed on there. The Buy American requirement is not mandatory in the summer food service program. We do, however, and USDA strongly encourages the purchase of domestic products over foreign objects. So move to page 5. If it'll let me. Okay. Page 5 discusses the responsible parties pertaining to small purchase procedures. So on page 5, you're going to identify the person or persons who are responsible for each area of the procurement process when you're conducting small purchases. So you're going to complete the yellow highlighted sections with the appropriate person's name. I just listed a random person. So I'm waiting so that hopefully y'all are filling this in as we go. Okay, so let's move on. Page 6. This is the page that I have the most problems with when I'm reviewing procurement plans. Notice in red that it says that these are samples. They are not intended for you to leave in there. It's just showing you how you can do a small procurement. So what you have to do is anything that you are going to purchase or procure that is below that $30,000 threshold, you're going to complete the category of each procurement that you're going to do. So you can see here that I put in miscellaneous grocery items as the first one. And that's that bread we were talking about. And so because it's a small amount, it doesn't exceed $10,000, I can use the micro purchase method. But in order to use the micro purchase method, I have to make sure that both I and anyone else who would purchase bread or other items that were needed for a site spread the wealth amongst available vendors. So what I'm saying here is that we're going to use the micro purchase method, and we're going to alternate between Walmart, Dollar General, and Family Dollar. So what you're going to input, if you're going to use the micro purchase method for miscellaneous groceries, you're going to put in that box, you're going to put the stores that you are going to use and that you are going to tell your employees to use. There's no contract involved with a micro purchase, so we're going to put an NA there. And then under contract duration and frequency, we're going to say as needed. The next example that I used was for cleaning supplies. I'm not, as a small sponsor, I'm not gonna spend over $30,000 on cleaning supplies. So what I plan to do is I plan to get small quotes. The state of Louisiana requires that you must have 3 documented quotes for each small procurement. So I've put here which cleaning supply companies I'm going to use. Now I can award the bid. I can award grease cleaner to one vendor and Comet to another vendor. But because I'm small, I probably am going to award based on who has the lowest total price. If you're a really big sponsor, you can get more than one company to bid on you and deliver. But remember, with the cost of fuel and the cost of everything else, you may be better off doing bottom line pricing. And I am saying that this is a fixed price contract. It has to stay the same price throughout the entire program, and that it is going to be an annual document. So in my procurement document, I'm going to put the dates of the contract. So again, you're going to replace all of this with the procurements that you are going to do that are going to be considered small procurements, either the micro purchase procurement or the small procurement method. On page 7 of the procurement plan is the formal procurement table. And as you can see here, I plan to purchase all of my food products except for produce from one vendor. I'm interested in getting the lowest price possible. So I'm going to use an IFB, not an RFP. Remember that an RFP has evaluation factors. And my evaluation factor for this is who has the lowest price. And I'm going to award all of the items to one vendor because that makes ordering a whole lot easier. And hopefully, because I'm going to award everything to one vendor, I'm going to get a lower price. So I've chosen 3 distributors that I can send my solicitation to. And I'm going to have vendors submit a price for each item that they will maintain for the length of the contract. And I'm going to do the duration of the contract to be 6 months. My food distributors don't carry produce, so I'm going to have to bid that separately. Again, I'm going to use an IFB, and I'm going to get bottom line pricing. The problem is that produce prices are very volatile. And you typically can't get produce vendors to submit a price that they're going to maintain for the length of the contract. As you see, that the duration of this contract is going to be every 6 months. But produce vendors are not going to hold prices for 6 months. So what I've done is I've put in a fixed price contract with a CPI increase allowed. And that's one of the things that I put into the revised procurement plan, with some language to allow you to purchase and then to put in your procurement document to allow the CPI increase. So let's talk for just a second, because a lot of people have never heard of what the CPI is. And what the CPI is a measure of the average change of prices that are paid for goods and services. There is a specific CPI for food away from home for all urban consumers. The CPI comes out every month after the end of the month, and it really doesn't come out till the middle of the next month. So that way the produce vendor can get an increase in prices as prices increase. But even including the CPI in a produce bid can be a problem, because the CPI does not account for disasters. Remember when the hurricane hit Florida and wiped out the entire orange crop, the CPI will not cover you for that. So this is what the CPI looks like. And it's a federal document that comes out again every single month. And so I put a screenshot of the CPI for the month of March. It came out on April the 12th. And it shows that food away from home increased 0.3% in March. It also shows that over the last 12 months, food away from home has increased a total of 6.9%. Now, I bet you all are rolling your eyes a little bit, because you and I both know that your price increases for your grocery supplies have increased more than 6.9%. And just in case you're interested, the food at home has increased by 10% over the last year, according to the CPI. I'm not sure I believe that either, because it sure seems like more when I go to the grocery store. So page 9 of the procurement document, it's for some reason it's skipping. On page 8 of the procurement document, under section C, you need to input your name and the title of the person that's going to be responsible for monitoring your contracts, to ensure that if the small purchase procurement method is used, that it does not exceed the small purchase threshold. You also input the name of the regional news source that you are going to use when you are advertising formal procurements. The requirement for posting the procurement to an electronic bid site is not required unless the sponsor is a public school food authority. So if you're not a public or charter school, then this requirement for an electronic bidding system does not apply to you. And remember, I said this is a Word document. If that section doesn't apply to you, you can take it out. Under section E, you need to indicate the length of time that the advertisement will be run. It's required that the procurement be advertised in that regional news source at least 2 times. In section G, input the appropriate small purchase threshold. Unless you are a charter school, your small procurement threshold is probably $30,000. That is the state procurement threshold. Some sponsors and SFAs have a lower procurement threshold. And if you have a lower procurement threshold for the small purchase threshold, then you would need to use that rather than the $30,000 state requirement. Page 9 also provides information that you have to include in your advertisement. I strongly encourage people to shorten their advertisement because advertising is so expensive. There are certain things that you are required to put in your advertisement. You have to include a general description of the items you're planning to procure, any deadline that you have for them submitting questions and when you're going to respond. If you're going to have a pre-bid meeting, then you need to give the date of the pre-bid meeting and also let them know if it's going to be required. The address where complete specifications and bid forms can be obtained, and also the short non-discrimination statement. On pages 9 to 12, if you look over these pages, it includes a very long list of requirements for both an IFB or an RFP. There's like 32 of them, so I wasn't going to put them on here, but make sure that you review the pages thoroughly when you're writing a formal solicitation to ensure that you have included all of the requirements. There are several that I have indicated are optional, and you can include them in your procurement documents if you choose. But most of them are required in a formal procurement, either an IFB or an RFP. So on page 12, you need to identify the title and the person, the title and the position, excuse me, of the person that is responsible for the formal procurement process. If you are issuing an RFP, on page 12, there are additional requirements for an RFP. Remember that an RFP includes evaluation criteria other than just price. So you have to identify in your procurement plan, as well as in your proposal, the title and position of the person that will be responsible for the evaluation process. On pages 13 to 17, I have included all of the required provisions. There are all provisions that USDA requires be in every formal contract. They come from Appendix 2 to CFR Part 200 and from 2 CFR 200. Also includes provisions for cost reimbursable contracts. So make sure that whether you're doing an IFB or an RFP, that you include all of these required provisions. You also have to include the number of days notice that the sponsor will provide to the vendor in the event the sponsor plans to terminate the contract for cause or convenience. There are some requirements for a cost reimbursable contract. Most sponsors don't do cost reimbursable contracts, so I'm not going to really discuss them here. If you don't plan to use the cost reimbursable contract section, you can remove it. The next section on pages 17 to 19 is some regulations concerning non-competitive proposals. And this type of proposal should be rarely, if ever, used. In order to use a non-competitive proposal, the item has to be available from only one source. This does not mean that only one vendor has the brand that you prefer. It means that the item itself is only available from one source. Now, a sponsor can use a non-competitive proposal if a public emergency exists that doesn't allow the time to complete a competitive solicitation. And also, if you have only one response to your solicitation, it's also considered a non-competitive procurement. Documented state agency approval is needed before using a non-competitive proposal. There's a sample of this document in your procurement plan, so for you to use, and we highly encourage you to use this vendor statement of no bid, whether it's a small procurement or a formal procurement, because what it does is it provides documentation that you attempted to conduct a competitive bidding process. Also, the feedback that you receive from vendors may assist you in tailoring a solicitation in the future that will increase the number of responses. Remember that the more competition you have, chances are you're going to get a lower price. Also on page 19, you describe how you plan to evaluate new products. You also have to include the title of the sponsor official that will review each transaction, and if necessary, the procedures to be used if the item that is purchased is not as it is specified. So on page 19, if you have to use an emergency person, you have to designate who is going to be responsible for maintaining a log of any emergency purchase you make. The sponsor also has to identify who will approve emergency purchases. Anytime an emergency purchase occurs, you must document the item name, the dollar amount, the name of the vendor, and the reason for the emergency. And I just want to reiterate this, that you must retain all books, records, and other documents related to the award of the contract for 3 years after the final payment. Starting on page 21, there are some sample documents that you will need in order to do a formal procurement. Every formal procurement has to have an independent price determination certificate that's completed by both the vendor and the sponsor, the suspension and debarment certification. Again, it's required. There also is some instructions for completing the suspension and debarment certificate, and the lobbying certification, which is required in all formal procurements. These are all, again, required documents that have to be included in your procurement document. Now, I have included some sample documents in the procurement plan, a sample proposal scorecard. If you were doing an RFP and wanted to come up with evaluation factors, it's strictly a sample, and you can use whatever evaluation factors that you choose as long as price has the highest weight. Also included is the Buy American certification form. Just remember that it's not, if you're doing just a summer food service program and not doing a school lunch or school breakfast program as well included in the procurement, the Buy American requirement does not apply. There's a checklist to help you make sure all of those required provisions that we talked about earlier are included in your formal bids. That sales tax exemption form for non-public schools who are participating National School Lunch and School Breakfast. This form can be used to send to the Department of Revenue to obtain your exemption. And then that vendor statement of no bid that we talked about, a copy of that is also included. So this concludes our training program. If there are any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. And I just messed up. Shoot. Well, somehow or other, I have managed to lose my screen. But I don't see. Okay, I did get one question. When is the plan due? And there is no due date for the plan. I would suggest that you complete your procurement plan before the school year begins again. And I would strongly suggest the question is this new plan what we are to complete now? Again, I do it before the school year, before you begin the procurement process for the next school year that begins July 1st. I would use the new plan just because it has information and optional things that you may want to put into your procurement document that you haven't put in before. For example, the CPI increase, allowing procurements to it be extended past 1 year. If you put that in your original procurement document and allow either no price increases or only price increases that are tied to an index such as the CPI, you can actually revise a contract and not revise. You can extend a contract without having to go out to bid again. So while you're not, it's not required, all of the requirements, the actual absolute requirements have been in the plan all along. I just make the changes to it to give you some assistance in writing a better procurement and some things you may want to put in to your procurement that you haven't had in there before. One click and it came back up. Then I get a question, what page is the CPI on again? Ooh, you're depending on my memory. Let's see. It's on page 7. And there is some verbiage in there on how you can do an extension to your contract, either using no price increase or giving vendors the CPI increase each year. Or in the case of produce, in the one I used as an example, that one used a CPI increase based on the month because the produce prices are so volatile. Okay, so if you have any questions, certainly feel free to call us. We will be happy to help you in any way. Make sure you get your procurement plan done. If you are a summer sponsor that is participating only in summer, I strongly suggest you do your procurement plan as quickly as possible because you should be going out to bid. And there are very few summer sponsors that will not exceed that $30,000 threshold for food. So you will most likely be having to do a formal procurement. So again, if you have questions or you need assistance with your procurement documents, please give us a call. I've actually done some Zoom calls with some different sponsors to help them actually give them some advice on writing the procurement document. So we're here to help. Just let us know if you need help. So with that, we're going to end today's session and hope you have a good rest of the week. Have a good day.